The clock on the dash blinked 3:47 p.m. when Officer Derek Maddox spotted the boy, walking alone down a tree-lined street in the Maplewood Hills neighborhood, quiet, upper-middle class, and predominantly white. The kid was black. That, in Maddox's eyes, made him suspicious by default. Zayden Cole, just 16, had one earbud in, backpack slung lazily over one shoulder, and a worn-out pair of basketball sneakers scraping the sidewalk. His hoodie read Lincoln High Track Team. He was 3 blocks from home. To Maddox, none of that mattered. The squad car slowed, shadowing Zayden's steps. Zayden felt it, that creeping, familiar sense of being watched. He glanced sideways and immediately lowered his gaze. His father's voice echoed in his memory. If they stop you, don't run. Don't argue. Stay calm. Stay alive. The window rolled down. Hey, you, stop right there, Maddox barked. Zayden paused, removed his earbud, and replied respectfully. Yes, sir? You live around here? The officer asked, already out of his cruiser. Yes, sir. Just heading home from school. ID. I'm 16, sir. I don't drive. I have my school ID. It's in my bag. May I? Keep your hands where I can see them. Zayden froze. His hands remained high. I'm not reaching, he said softly. Maddox approached, eyes scanning the boy with military precision. His posture, stiff, squared. His tone, testing. Zayden could tell this wasn't about law enforcement anymore. It was something deeper, more personal. The officer circled the teen like a hawk. What's in the bag? Drugs? Tools? Weapons? No, sir. Just books and shoes. Empty it. Zayden complied slowly, laying his notebooks, calculator, water bottle, and a pair of old Jordans on the sidewalk. Nothing criminal. Nothing threatening. But the officer wasn't looking for truth. He was looking for dominance. Where's your father? Maddox asked suddenly, voice coated in sarcasm. Zayden didn't answer right away. The last thing he wanted to do was bring him into this. But pride, quiet, inherited, unbreakable, made him speak. He's overseas. Special forces. That's when it changed. Maddox's face contorted into amusement, and then a loud, dismissive laugh. Special forces? He repeated mockingly. Sure, kid. And I'm James Bond. Zayden said nothing. His father, Major Isaac Cole, had taught him the difference between silence and submission. And in that moment, his silence spoke volumes. Maddox, unaware of who he'd just mocked, had made the worst mistake of his career. But the storm wouldn't come that day. It would come 3 days later, in black SUVs with tinted windows. And no one in Maplewood Hills would ever look at the Cole family the same way again. By the next afternoon, whispers had already started circulating through Maplewood Hills. A few neighbors had seen the stop. Some said Officer Maddox had made a point to humiliate the boy. Others muttered that the Cole family had always been too quiet, too private, or too disciplined. No one had anything bad to say, just enough passive suspicion to justify their stares. At school, Zayden kept his head down, until Mr. Reeds, the assistant principal, pulled him aside in the hallway. Just checking in, Zayden. Everything all right after yesterday? Zayden nodded. Yes, sir. Mr. Reeds gave a forced smile, then said quietly, You handled yourself well. For what it's worth. It wasn't worth much, and they both knew it. By lunch, the buzz had reached the cafeteria. A senior named Marcus joked loud enough for people to hear. Yo, I heard Zay's dad is like Jason Bourne or some sh*T. Special Forces? What's next? Aliens in the backyard. Zayden kept chewing. He didn't rise to the bait. His restraint only seemed to make them try harder. Later that night, Maddox sat in front of his department computer. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before he typed. Isaac Cole, military records. The result came back instantly, access denied. Clearance required. He blinked. Tried again through a back channel, using a friend's login. Same result. Redacted. Blocked. Flagged. What was going on? He tried property records. The Cole house came up, co-owned by Isaac and his wife, Amira Cole, a pediatrician at the local hospital. Everything looked normal. Almost too normal. Social media? Nothing. Zayden's accounts were locked down. Amira had a Facebook page with nothing recent. And Isaac? Not a single trace. No LinkedIn. No veterans forums. No mention in any public records past a work visa stamp 12 years ago. It didn't add up. The next day, Maddox returned to Cedar Grove, not on duty, but just driving through. He slowed in front of 1124, Alder Lane. The Cole residence. Curtains drawn. Lights on. He lingered. 3 houses down, Mrs. Branford, a retired nurse who had lived in Maplewood Hills for 40 years, waved cautiously at him from her porch. Maddox approached with his fake charm. "Evening, ma'am. You've lived here a long time, right?" She narrowed her eyes. "Yes. What?" "That family," he said, gesturing toward the Cole residence. "Know much about them?" Mrs. Branford pursed her lips. "Amira's a good woman. Brought me soup when I had surgery. Zayden shovels my driveway without being asked." "And the husband?" She hesitated. "Not around much. Overseas a lot. Army, I think. Real quiet type. Ever see him in uniform?" "No. Never. But," she glanced around, "I once saw 2 men pick him up in a black SUV. Real serious types. Didn't knock. Just waited in the driveway. They drove off without a word." Maddox nodded slowly, trying to hide his grin. Bingo. Back in his car, he started scribbling notes. "Isaac Cole. Who are you really?" What Maddox didn't realize was that just down the street, a camera mounted under Mrs. Branford's bird feeder had been tracking his every move. Installed not by her, but by someone else. Someone who had been monitoring Maplewood Hills for years. Back inside the Cole residence, Amira placed her hand on Zayden's shoulder. "He asked about your father?" she whispered. Zayden nodded. "I didn't say much. Just that he was military." Amira closed her eyes. "We've talked about this. I know. I couldn't let him act like Dad doesn't matter." Her voice softened. "Your father does matter. That's why we keep things quiet. His work isn't like mine. It doesn't come with name tags or LinkedIn profiles. It comes with shadows." Down the hallway, a locked drawer in Isaac Cole's office pulsed faintly red. Inside it, a silent alert had just been triggered. Someone had tried to access his classified records. The clock was ticking. Officer Derek Maddox had been a cop for 12 years. He'd dealt with gangbangers, drunks, bored teenagers, and the occasional entitled suburban mom. But nothing got under his skin like someone who looked calm when they should be scared. And that's exactly what bothered him about Zayden Cole. Too calm, too controlled, too polite. It wasn't fear. It was training. 3 days after the first stop, Maddox showed up again, this time at Lincoln High School. His pretense? A random locker check due to suspected drug activity. He knew it was weak, but the school administration caved like wet paper. As students watched from their classrooms, Maddox had Zayden pulled from third-period biology. "Open your locker," he demanded. Zayden did. Books. A football. A snack bar. Clean. Again. Maddox's eyes narrowed. "Empty your bag." Zayden's classmates peeked from doorways, phones half-raised. Zayden's jaw tightened, but he obeyed. "You do this to everyone?" he asked. "Or just the black kids?" Maddox leaned in, whispering with venom, "I know who your father is. Or who he pretends to be." Zayden met his gaze. "You don't know anything." "Not yet," Maddox sneered. But someone else had heard everything. Maya Sanchez, a junior with a hidden camera stitched into her jacket, caught the entire exchange. Audio, video, everything. That night, she uploaded it to a private drive and forwarded it to an encrypted contact listed only as Alpha, trusted. 3 states away, Isaac Cole, deep in a military facility beneath Virginia soil, received the alert. The screen glowed red. Subject, Zayden Cole, local police engaged. Possible surveillance. Isaac froze. For years, he had followed orders, completed covert missions, and stayed off the grid, all to protect his family from enemies who didn't operate in daylight. But now, his enemy was local. His enemy wore a badge. He closed the laptop, reached for a secure phone, and made a single call. The next morning, 4 black SUVs rolled into Maplewood Hills, slow, silent, and precise. At 9 a.m., as Maddox walked into the precinct, he was greeted by a woman in a dark suit and 2 silent men in unmarked tactical gear. "Officer Maddox?" she asked. "Yes." "Step outside, please. This is a federal matter." He laughed. "Yeah? And who the hell are you?" From behind her, a voice rang out, deep, level, and cold. "He knows who you are? But you don't know who I am." Maddox turned. Standing by the SUV, flanked by 2 uniformed Marines, was Major Isaac Cole, dressed in plain black, military posture unmistakable. Maddox blinked. "Who the?" "Isaac Cole. Special Activities Division. Confirmed. Clearance. Strike level 9. The words weren't just titles. They were weapons. The woman beside him nodded. Officer Maddox, we're placing you on immediate suspension pending investigation. Your unauthorized access of DoD records, illegal searches, and racial profiling have been documented. You are to surrender your badge and weapon. Maddox backed up, flustered. This is a setup. No, Isaac said quietly. This is accountability. He stepped forward, eyes locked on Maddox. You tried to intimidate my son. You followed my wife. You accessed classified files without clearance. I'm law enforcement, Maddox snapped. Isaac didn't flinch. No, you're a coward with a badge. The precinct lobby fell into a stunned silence as Maddox was cuffed, not by local police, but by federal hands. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Maya was there, her phone lit. Zayden stood at the curb, eyes locked on his father, the man who had been a ghost, a legend, a question mark. Now he stood in daylight. Solid. Real. Isaac walked to him slowly. Dad, Zayden said quietly. Why now? Isaac looked at his son, his voice steady. Because they didn't just poke the bear, son. They opened the cage. Zayden nodded. I didn't tell them anything. I know, Isaac said. You didn't need to. You carried yourself like a soldier. And in that moment, between the man in uniform and the boy in sneakers, generations of strength passed silently between them. Maya uploaded the video by midnight. By morning, it had 3.2 million views. And Officer Derek Maddox was trending. For all the wrong reasons. By sunrise, Maplewood Hills was no longer just a quiet suburb. It was national news. Cable anchors tossed around terms like racial profiling, abuse of power, and military silence broken. The video Maya posted, titled, Officer Harris's Teen, Then His Father Shows Up, in uniform, had gone viral. Comments poured in. Most were furious. Some were defensive. All were loud. In the school hallway, Zayden walked through a sea of stares. Some kids nodded with respect. Others looked away. A few whispered, but none dared laugh. By lunch, Principal Evans called him into the office. Zayden, he said, fidgeting. The board is meeting. There's talk of a school assembly. You've become, well, a symbol. Zayden looked up. I didn't ask for that. I know. But what you and your family did, it matters. We're updating our student protection policy. Starting now. Zayden didn't smile. He just nodded. It was something. Meanwhile, Officer Maddox sat in his living room, blinds shut, face gray. News vans hovered outside like vultures. His badge had been taken, his laptop seized, his weapon locked away. He'd been suspended, with no pay pending federal investigation. His voicemail was full. So were his regrets. But he still didn't feel guilt. Only resentment. Down the street, Amira Cole walked into the hospital to applause. Nurses, doctors, even patients stood. Some clapped. Others whispered. She's the one, they said. Her husband's the one from the video. Amira kept her chin high, smile soft, but said nothing. She didn't need to. Truth didn't need to shout anymore. It had a microphone now. And Isaac? He stood before a quiet crowd in the town square that Saturday. It wasn't a rally. It wasn't a protest. Just a gathering, neighbors, students, veterans, even officers, who came because they couldn't ignore what had happened. Isaac took the mic. His uniform was clean. Not flashy. Not full of medals. Just dignified. I didn't come back to humiliate a man, he began. I came back because a man abused power against my son. Murmurs spread. Isaac continued. Power doesn't always wear a badge. And it doesn't always come with rank. Sometimes it wears a school hoodie. Sometimes it hides behind a phone camera. Sometimes it's a kid who chooses not to fight back because he understands the world doesn't need another headline. It needs a solution. Silence. Then applause. He stepped back without fanfare. And that silence, respectful, strong, echoed louder than any chant could have. That weekend, the local government announced new funding for de-escalation training, body camera expansion, and an independent civilian review board. Officer Maddox's full record was re-examined. Prior complaints surfaced. Buried reports were reopened. Change, slow and reluctant, began to move. And behind it all was a 16-year-old boy who didn't throw a punch. He just stood his ground. 3 months later, the leaves in Maplewood Hills had turned. And so had its people. The town that once looked the other way had been forced to see itself in high definition. Schools updated their equity protocols. The police department held open forums. Officer Maddox's termination became official. He never returned to law enforcement. But the biggest change was invisible. It lived in conversations parents now had with their children. It lived in the side glances that became direct eye contact. It lived in a boy who walked down the street and wasn't followed anymore. Zayden Cole stood in front of a packed auditorium at Lincoln High. He hadn't expected to be chosen as speaker. He wasn't the loudest or the most popular. But when the student council nominated him, no one objected. Even Principal Evans smiled when he stepped up to the mic. Zayden looked at the sea of students, some nodding, some unsure, all waiting. "My dad told me something," he began quietly. He said, "There are two kinds of power, the kind that controls people and the kind that protects them." He paused. "A man tried to control me. My family chose to protect each other. We didn't fight back with fists. We stood still and let the truth speak." A few students clapped. Then more. Zayden nodded. "I steady. If you ever feel small, remember, it only takes one quiet voice to remind the world what right looks like." In the front row, Amira wiped her eyes. Behind her, Isaac stood, not in uniform, not with medals, just as a father. Proud, silent, strong. Later, outside, Zayden found a note taped to his locker. It was from Maya. "You didn't just survive. You changed the story."